Hook asterisk, she poured the wine, smiled like she'd been holding something in for years, and whispered, asterisk, don't tell him about tonight. Asterisk, I didn't plan to say it, but I did. Asterisk, our secret forever. Asterisk, that was the moment everything changed. It had been years since I had walked up that familiar stone path, the one that led to my best friend's house, where summers always smelled like sun lotion and grilled corn, and laughter used to spill out through open windows. The place looked smaller now, quieter. The kind of quiet that clings to a home after the kids grow up and move away. I knocked, and for a moment, I almost hoped no one would answer, that maybe the memories would stay just that, untouched. But then the door opened, and there she was, Elena. She looked almost the same, yet not at all. Her hair, darker than I remembered, fell in loose waves around her shoulders. There were faint lines near her eyes, the kind that only come from a lifetime of smiling and worrying in equal measure. She blinked in surprise before her face softened into something warm and familiar. "Look at you," she said, a laugh caught at her voice. "All grown up." Her words were simple, but something in the way she said them, soft, almost wistful, made my chest tighten. She stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. The house smelled of rosemary and rain. She must have been cooking. I followed her through the hallway, past the old family photos that still hung slightly crooked on the wall. One of them showed me and her son, covered in mud from some long-forgotten adventure. I smiled at it without meaning to. In the kitchen, she moved with the same grace I remembered. She was wearing a loose cream sweater, sleeves pushed up, hands moving easily as she stirred something on the stove. "Stay for dinner," she said over her shoulder. "He should be home soon. You know how late he works these days." I started to protest. I didn't want to intrude, but she waved me off with a small smile. "You came all this way. At least let me feed you." So I stayed. She handed me a knife and a pile of tomatoes, asking for help like she used to when I was a teenager hanging around her kitchen. Our hands brushed near the cutting board, just barely, but enough for both of us to feel it. Neither of us said anything, though something quiet shifted between us. Outside, the rain had started again, tapping gently against the window pane. The house felt smaller, the air warmer, scented with olive oil and garlic. "You've really changed," she said after a while, voice thoughtful. "So have you," I replied. She laughed softly, almost under her breath, like she wasn't sure she was supposed to. Then she looked at me, not the way a friend's mother looks at a boy she used to drive home after soccer practice, but like someone seeing a person they used to know, now grown and unfamiliar in the best way. And just like that, the night began, not with wine or secrets yet, but with a quiet dinner invitation and the kind of warmth that always comes before a storm. Dinner was almost ready when her phone buzzed. She wiped her hands on a towel and picked it up, her eyes softening as soon as she saw the name on the screen. It was her son, my friend. I turned away politely, pretending to check something on my phone, but her voice carried just enough for me to hear fragments. A small sigh, a quiet, "No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Just be safe, okay?" When she hung up, she took a slow breath and tried to smile. "Well," she said, brushing a stray hair behind her ear, "looks like it's just you and me tonight." He got caught up at work again. I could tell she was trying to sound casual, but there was a flicker of something else beneath it. That familiar kind of loneliness people were like perfume. Invisible, but unmistakable once you notice. I offered to leave, but she shook her head. "Don't you dare. The food's already made. You're staying." So I did. We sat across from each other at the small wooden dining table, the one that used to be covered in homework and pizza boxes. A single candle flickered between us, its light catching the gold in her hair. Outside, rain streaked the windows, soft and steady, like the evening had decided to wrap the house in its own kind of hush. At first, conversation stayed safe. How work was going, what I'd been up to, small things about the city. But somewhere between the first and second glass of water, our voices grew quieter, more honest. She asked me if I was happy. Really happy. The question caught me off guard. Most people don't ask that. Not sincerely, anyway. But she did. Her gaze held mine, patient and searching. "I'm getting there," I said finally. She smiled a little. "Good. Don't let life rush you. It has a way of doing that. Her words landed somewhere deep, and for a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain and the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. Then she told me how strange it felt, the house being quiet most nights. How she still caught herself cooking too much food. How sometimes, when she passed her son's old room, she'd pause, just to listen, as if maybe he'd be there again, even for a second. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. There's a kind of intimacy in silence. Not the kind that needs touch, but the kind that happens when someone lets you see the small ache behind their smile. That's what filled the room that night. By the time we finished eating, the air between us had changed, softer, slower. She laughed at something I said, and when her hand brushed mine as she reached for her glass, she didn't pull away right away. For a moment, we just stayed like that, two people who weren't supposed to share much more than old memories, quietly realizing how easy it was to feel understood again. After dinner, she began gathering the plates, but I stopped her halfway. "Let me," I said, standing to help. She hesitated, the corners of her lips turning upward just slightly. "You've grown up too polite for your own good." I smiled back. "You taught me well." That made her laugh, soft, low, the kind of laugh that sounds like it's been waiting a while to escape. For a moment, the years between us didn't seem to matter. When the dishes were done, she opened the fridge, searching for something. Her movements were calm, but unhurried, like she was buying time with small gestures. Then she pulled out a dark green bottle and held it up to the light. "I shouldn't," she murmured to herself. "But maybe just one glass." She turned to me. "Do you still drink red?" "Sometimes," I said, smiling. "Good," she replied, her tone quieter now. "Then it won't feel like I'm drinking alone." The cork popped with that familiar soft thud, and the sound felt almost intimate, like the air itself had paused to listen. She poured carefully, her hands steady, the ruby-colored liquid catching the warm kitchen light as it filled each glass. We moved to the living room, the same one where I'd once sat on the floor playing video games with her son, surrounded by snack wrappers and laughter. Now, years later, it felt smaller, dimmer. There were books stacked by the lamp, a blanket draped across the couch, a hint of sandalwood in the air. She handed me a glass and sat beside me. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her arm. "To old friends," she said, raising her glass slightly. I met her eyes, and to new moments I added. The wine was smooth, dark, almost sweet. It loosened the edges of the evening. We talked easily about her garden, my job, the strange comfort of getting older. Every so often, our eyes would meet mid-sentence and linger a beat too long. At one point, she looked at me thoughtfully. "You always listened more than you spoke," she said. "Even as a kid, I used to think that was rare." I laughed softly. "And you always knew when someone needed to talk." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy in the best way, filled with all the things that didn't need to be said. The rain had stopped outside, leaving only the distant hum of the streetlights. Then she shifted slightly, turning toward me. Her hand brushed mine as she reached for her glass. Not by accident this time. Her fingers rested there for a second longer than necessary. Warm, deliberate, unspoken. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said quietly, eyes lowering to the rim of her glass. "But it feels nice to have company." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. And in that small moment, her voice low, the scent of wine between us, the dim light catching the faint blush on her cheeks, something fragile and new began to take shape. Not love. Not yet. Just two lonely hearts, realizing they were no longer alone. The wine had settled between us like a shared secret, quiet, familiar, and slightly dangerous in its warmth. We'd both relaxed into the evening now. The edge of formality had faded. Elena sat curled against the corner of the couch, one leg tucked beneath her, a soft throw blanket draped across her knees. I sat across from her, angled slightly toward her, the empty glasses glinting on the coffee table between us. The rain had stopped completely. The world outside was silent except for the faint buzz of the porch light and the low hum of the refrigerator. She was the one who broke the quiet first. "You know," she said, eyes drifting toward the window, "you've changed so much." the way you speak, the way you carry yourself. It's nice to see." Her voice lingered on nice, softer than before, almost like she wasn't sure she should have said it. I smiled, feeling the heat of the moment in my chest. "You still make me nervous, you know that?" That earned a genuine laugh, the kind that warmed the space instantly. "I make you nervous? I'm the one sitting here realizing how old I must seem to you." "You don't," I said quickly, maybe too quickly. "You just seem the same. Just—" I stopped, searching for the right word. "Beautiful," I finished quietly. Her eyes flicked up to mine, surprised, searching, and then unsure of where to land. She looked down at her hands, twisting her glass gently by the stem. The faintest blush rose to her cheeks. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. "Maybe not," I said, "but it's true." The clock ticked. The air thickened again, full of things neither of us knew how to name. After a moment, she took a small breath and said, "Can I tell you something? Something I probably shouldn't." I nodded. She leaned back, her eyes distant, as if she were speaking to the room itself. "When you were younger, I used to see how kind you were to your friends, to me, to everyone. You had this gentleness that people your age didn't usually have. I always admired that." Her voice trembled slightly on the word admired. "I used to think," she continued, "that someday someone would be very lucky to be seen by you the way you see people." Her eyes found mine again, a quiet, steady gaze that said more than words ever could. I didn't know what to do. The air between us felt fragile, like a sheet of glass that could shatter with one wrong move. So I just said softly, "Maybe I already am." She laughed, but her voice cracked. It wasn't mockery. It was disbelief mixed with something tender and scared. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, eyes glistening slightly. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "What are we doing?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that the space between us, once filled with small talk and distance, now felt alive. And for the first time that night, neither of us looked away. The clock had slipped past midnight without either of us noticing. The house was quiet now, that deep kind of quiet that only comes after a long rain. The candle on the table had burned low, its flames small and unsteady, throwing slow-moving shadows across the walls. Elena sat beside me on the couch now. We hadn't meant to move closer. It had just happened naturally, the way two people sometimes drift toward warmth without thinking. The wine had softened her voice. It was lower, slower, touched with something unguarded. She was telling me about the last few years, the late nights, the things she'd let go of, the dreams she'd quietly folded away. I listened the way I always had with her, not to fix, not to advise, but to simply be there. When she paused, I said, "You've always been stronger than you think." She turned her head, meeting my eyes. "You always say the right thing, don't you?" "I don't mean to. It just comes out." She smiled, that small, grateful kind of smile that makes the heart ache a little. Then her gaze fell, landing somewhere near my hand, resting on the couch cushion between us. She hesitated, and then, slowly, she placed her hand on top of mine. Her skin was warm, delicate. I felt her pulse through her fingers, steady but soft, like she was both nervous and calm at once. She didn't look at me right away. Neither of us moved. "Do you ever think," she began quietly, "about how different life might be if timing worked in our favor?" I didn't answer at first. My throat felt tight. "Maybe I do," I said finally. "More than I should." She nodded slightly, as if she already knew. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, filled with everything we couldn't say. Her thumb brushed against my hand, once barely there, and then she let out a soft, trembling laugh. "He wouldn't understand," she whispered, almost as if she was afraid of her own voice. "So don't tell him about tonight." Her words lingered in the air, fragile and final all at once. I looked at her, at the way her eyes glistened in the dim light, at the faint sadness tucked behind her calm expression. She wasn't asking for secrecy out of guilt. She was asking because this night wasn't about betrayal. It was about two people who had simply found each other, if only for a moment, in the loneliness of their own separate lives. I nodded slowly. "Our secret forever." She exhaled, a soft sigh that seemed to release all the tension between us. Then she leaned closer, not for a kiss, but until her head rested gently on my shoulder. Her hair brushed against my neck, light as breath. I could feel her heartbeat through the fabric of her sweater. Calm now, steady, as if the world had stopped asking her to be strong. We stayed like that in silence. No words, no promises. Just the sound of the clock ticking softly behind us, and the quiet understanding that sometimes the most beautiful things are the ones we can never explain. The light woke me first. Soft, muted sunlight was spilling through the curtains, the kind that only happens after a long night of rain. The house felt different in the morning, lighter somehow, though the memory of the night before still lingered like the scent of red wine and candle smoke in the air. For a few seconds, I wasn't sure where I was. The couch beneath me was unfamiliar until I noticed the throw blanket tucked around my shoulders. When I didn't remember pulling up, that's when I realized she must have done it. Elena. I sat up slowly. My head wasn't heavy, but my heart was, not with regret, just with the strange tenderness that follows a night that meant more than it should. The empty glasses were still on the coffee table, the candle now a pool of wax. Everything was as we'd left it, like the house had been holding its breath, afraid to disturb what had happened. From the kitchen came the faint clink of porcelain. The smell of coffee drifted through the air, rich and grounding. I stood, still wrapped in the blanket, and walked toward the sound. She was there, hair tied loosely, wearing a soft gray sweater. The morning light painted her face in gold, gentler than any words could be. She turned when she heard me. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm, steady. "Morning," I replied. I didn't mean to fall asleep. She smiled a little. "You look comfortable." I didn't have the heart to wake you. There was no tension between us, no awkwardness. Just quiet understanding, the kind that grows when two people share something they both know can't be repeated. I leaned against the counter, watching her pour the coffee. The simple rhythm of it felt grounding, the spoons stirring, the soft steam rising. "Did you sleep?" I asked. "Not much," she said honestly. "But that's all right. Some nights aren't meant for sleep." She handed me a cup, her fingers brushing mine, brief, gentle, familiar. I wanted to thank her for the evening, but the words felt too small, too fragile for what the night had been. Instead, I said softly, "I'm glad I came." Her gaze lifted to mine, and for a heartbeat, everything stilled. There was affection there, quiet, restrained, but real. "I'm glad too," she said. "You reminded me that I'm still seen." That sentence stayed with me. It was both an ending and a gift. When I left, she walked me to the door. The sky outside was pale blue, washed clean by the rain. She stood in the doorway, arms folded gently, a faint smile on her lips. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too," I replied. As I stepped off the porch, I turned once more. She was still there, framed by the soft morning light, calm, beautiful, real. And I knew, in that quiet moment, that nothing more needed to happen. What had passed between us wasn't a secret of guilt. It was a memory of kindness, connection, and quiet recognition. Some nights change you not because of what you did, but because of how gently they reminded you that you're still capable of feeling. Time has a way of softening memories, rounding their edges until they feel like dreams you can almost believe were real. Years passed after that night. Life, as it always does, kept moving. I built a career, changed apartments, met new people. My friend, her son, and I stayed in touch, though not as closely as before. Different paths, different rhythms. Every once in a while, I'd drive by that old neighborhood. The trees we used to climb had grown taller, the houses smaller somehow. And her house, Elena's, still stood there, its white fence chipped at the corners, the same soft yellow porch light glowing in the evenings. I never stopped in. I never needed to. Some goodbyes don't need to be spoken a last. But she stayed with me in quiet ways. It would happen when a song came on the radio, something slow, something meant for late nights. Or when I saw an open bottle of wine and remembered the way she'd held her glass, her fingers tracing the rim while she tried to find the right words. Sometimes it was just the rain, soft, steady, tapping against a window somewhere. And for a few seconds, I could almost feel that same warmth again. She taught me something without ever saying it out loud. That connection doesn't always need a name or a future to be real. Some people come into your life not to stay, but to remind you how deeply you're capable of feeling. Years later, when I finally saw her again, it was by chance. It was a late afternoon at a small art gallery downtown. I was there for an exhibit opening, a work event more than anything. I turned, and there she was, standing near a window, a glass of sparkling water in hand, the sunlight painting soft amber in her hair. For a second, it felt like time folded back. She saw me too. Surprise first, then something gentler. We walked toward each other, slower than before, cautious but smiling. "Of all places," she said quietly, her voice still warm, still steady. "Of all people," I replied. We talked for a while, about art, about life, about her son, who was married now. Everything was light, easy. The weight of that old night wasn't there anymore. What was left between us was something simpler, affection without ache, memory without longing. When we said goodbye, she touched my arm, just a light touch, familiar and brief. "It's good to see you," she said. "You too," I told her. "Always will be." As I walked away, I realized the story between us had ended exactly where it should have. Not with regret, not with what-ifs, but with quiet gratitude. Because some secrets aren't about hiding. They're about keeping safe a moment, a feeling, a version of ourselves that existed only once. And sometimes, remembering is the most faithful kind of love there is.